Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 308th episode of Real Hawk Talk. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at Hawk Blogger. And, people have been asking, Evan, for a little bit more dog in the episode. So I brought Finn for at least part of this episode. I will warn you, this guy barks at anything and anyone. So I can't promise that he's going to stick around, but Finn, you want to say hi?
Finn, do you remember me, sweetheart? We were like little cuddle bugs on what was that holiday? Was it Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's right.
Finn and I, we got along real well. I kind of entrapped him for multiple hours, but
Anyone that hasn't seen Evan with a dog present, it's a little disturbing, man. I mean, there's a little. I felt the need to maybe like locking my daughter up in her room. Like I felt like there were some boundaries being crossed.
I mean, let's be super clear about this. Like, if you invite me over to your home and you have a dog, I'm kissing the shit out of your dog.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, you are.
Like, there's just no negotiables on this. I'm not asking for consent. I'm kissing your dog.
You are a dog lover, and I'm gonna assume it's in the most platonic sense, but it's questionable at times. That is Evan Hill at Evan Hill HB, and I promised that we would give an update on whether anything is hatched in your brain since your issue, and any updates there that we should
Have
know
I been
about?
on the show since that happened?
I don't think so. There's been rumors. People are like, he's been taken over.
Can I just tell you guys something? I was receiving texts from people I have not heard from in years.
When
that occurrence happened.
Yeah.
For those of you in the audience that don't know, I'll make this super short, but I was having like significant ear pain a couple of weeks ago for like 48 hours or so. And it was so significant that I was waking up in the middle of the night. Okay. It was like a sharp pain all of a sudden. So significant that it literally woke me up in the middle of the night a couple of times. And I thought I had an ear infection for the first time as an adult since childhood. I don't really remember what an ear infection felt like. So that was kind of my assumption. So, I was taking those Q-tips. I know you're not supposed to put them in your ears, but I was fucking, going deep with the Q-tips. And, right before I was about to start work on the third day, I was just smacking my head. I was like, there's no shot something's in here, right? So I just like smacked the left side of my head, the opposite side of my head really hard. And I'm like turned upside down. And a spider drops out, man. And this thing was thick as hell. This thing was so thick. And almost immediately the pain sort of started to like dissipate. But went to urgent care just because the pain was sticking around for a little bit. But no, I'm good. I did take some antibiotics just in case stuff was infected, which is super gross. But haven't had any issues since. I am super hypersensitive to anything in my ears, though. So if like I feel like my brain is starting to like manufacture some fake tingles here and there, but no spider controlling my brain that I'm aware of. So,
well,
crazy story.
That was I when I was reading your text message, I was with Rachel and I said no out loud. Exactly. I was like, no.
You're 100% right.
She's like, what? Like, she thought someone had died. And I'm like, I told her, and she's like, no.
Well, so it's funny because like before I even tweeted it or anything, I just sent it to like my family and a group text with you guys because I was freaking the fuck out. Some people thought I was faking it. I was not faking it. Did not have a fun time. So the spider escaped, by the way.
Oh.
It like crawled under my desk so fast. I was like I pulled out my phone like immediately, tried to take like a quick photo. That thing ran like 9,000 miles an hour under my desk, and I vacuumed my office like 5 times over. It might be in here somewhere.
Evan, I can guarantee, I tell you exactly what happened to that spider. It has died of cholesterol from In-N-Out. It like took one bite and it is like done. There's no doubt about it.
Man, I hope so. That was a traumatic experience. I had to go to therapy afterwards. It was emotionally traumatizing. So there's your spider update. Crazy story.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And Jeff, at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. I'm so happy you were able to join us. I assume, do they have spiders in Canada?
Yeah, that Evans story freaked me out, man. Just hearing it live again almost sent me into a tailspin. We have spiders in Canada, but I've never got one stuck in my ear before. The Spider-Man bit that you had going was pretty funny, though, when you hear a picture, and that was pretty good. But my God, I got some buddies who are just like totally freaked out by spiders. I'm not terrified of spiders like some of my buddies are, but if one was in my ear, I don't know how I'd go on.
Well, fellas, I think we've all been crawling the walls, watching the Seahawks muddle through free agency. And I think it's time to talk about it. I think they're far enough through. I think there's enough dominoes that have fallen that there might be some stuff left to go. There might be a Randy Gregory or, some other, edge rusher. Who knows? They might do some other things, but they're going to be relatively minor moves from here on out. And since we last talked about free agency, the Seahawks, I think, have added the new names are Kevon Wallace. We already talked about Kevin, I think his name is the new guard. At least that was on the mock draft pod. We talked about that a little bit. Jonathan Hankins, they signed, defensive tackle. Anybody else that I'm missing that has been signed in the last couple of days? I think that's really it, right?
I'm sorry, did you say Jonathan Hankins or no?
I did.
Okay.
That's
See,
fucking
Evan rarely listens to what I say during the pod. He reads stuff.
I think the guard you named was the wrong name.
Ankrum or
Tremaine.
Oh, Tremaine. Yeah. Okay.
The Rams fans were so high on. Yeah.
Are you being sarcastic or was he?
No, they're being sarcastic.
No, I'm being very sarcastic.
Okay, got it.
Brian sent us a DM from someone or a tweet being like, "I'm a hardcore Rams fan. I've legit never heard of that guy."
Dude, he was a 250th pick in the draft, 2020, 7th round, and has played a total of like 101 snaps in 4 years. So he's about as well known as, Raekwon O'Neal. Like they're in that category. So anyway, that's where we are. And before we talk about what some other people are saying about this draft, or about this free agency class, I want to hear your grades. We're going to do this right off the top. I want to hear your grades with what the Seahawks have done so far in free agency to this point. And you can tell us why your grade is what it is. You can make it relative to whatever. There are no rules, but other than I need a letter grade and I need a reason why. And Evan, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah. So my grade is probably, I think, a B plus. And the rationale behind that grade is Seattle is Mike McDonald and John Schneider are. I've been making this case all week over the past couple of weeks on Twitter. They're gutting this roster and they're building a new team, a new franchise in Mike McDonald's vision. You've got guys like Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, Bobby Wagner, Jordan Brooks, Will Dissly, Damian Lewis gone. That's a lot of starters. I understand there's arguments to be made that if Pete Carroll returned, some of those guys wouldn't be back regardless. But there's a whole changing of the guard here. And it's interesting because Seattle's decisions from like a salary cap perspective are consolidating the dead money in 2024, and they're taking some serious hits on it because of those decisions, and it's reducing their cap flexibility, their ability to sign free agents, all that sort of stuff. They could still make moves, obviously, if they needed to. But what this tells me is that combination of the dead cap allotments for 2024 and these short, like 1-year deals with a lot of these guys, it tells me that this is like, I don't know if you want to use the word rebuilding, but like it's at minimum like a regrouping year where 2025 is really going to be a truly clean slate for this franchise, for this roster. Like there's going to be a lot of guys. They were talking about 2025 cap space on Twitter. I saw over the past week, and there's guys that are, I think, some big names that are not going to be Seahawks next year that carry massive cap hits on this team. So I give it a B+ grade. I'll wrap up my long story short thoughts on this, but I give it a B+ grade because I think Mike Macdonald is regrouping this entire team, regrouping this franchise. We're going in a new direction, and it means that they got to do some changing of the guard, and they're clearly willing to eat it this year. It doesn't mean they'll be bad this year, but it does impact their financial flexibility. So I'm excited about what this means for like 2025 and beyond. I would be super concerned if they had just like, let me tell you what have given me a bad grade. If they had retained both safeties, tried to bring back Bobby Wagner, paid Jordan Brooks some crazy amount, paid Damian Lewis some crazy amount, those all would have been like, holy shit, we've got a problem type moves. We need to go in a different direction. And this is what I've been clamoring for years. So I give it a really strong grade. It doesn't mean it's going to be super positive, but you know, in terms of outcome down the road, but in terms of like excitement level about going into something new and building a new vision behind a new head coach with a new coaching staff, I'm pretty stoked about the decisions they're making. So that's my answer.
Appreciate it. Jeff, where are you? And let's not talk about Mr. Breer yet, because we'll talk about that after we're done. But where are you?
Oh, no, that's not going to impact my grade. So I'm probably a B-. And there's this idea out there like the Seahawks are cheap in free agency, and I understand where that comes from. I saw Mike Duger put this out, like the Seahawks had a frugal free agency. They paid Leonard Williams $21.5 million. So I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why people seem to forget that players on your own team count as free agents. So for the most part, I agree with almost everything Evan said. I think bringing back Leonard Williams, and for the most part, Brian, you put out a great tweet today with a quadrant of how, like, where the Seahawks are in terms of who they've lost in free agency. And if you look at the franchises they're around, it's most of the franchises that I've kind of clamored that the Seahawks have been around. The reason I'm B- and not closer to where Evan is I absolutely hate what they've done with the guard position. And I was pretty close to going C simply because of that. So the thing I'm trying to balance in my head is we can't focus too much just on 2024. This is not a one-year build. What everything Evan talked about is exactly what they should be doing. They're not going to contend for Super Bowl this year. They haven't taken on a lot of bad risk. I just would have liked if they took the Noah Fant money and put that into the interior offensive line. To me, that's the one black mark for this offseason for me. I absolutely hate going into another draft where they're so weak at guard. And I get from like a front office standpoint and Oluwatimi, like let him see if he can be the center. He's drafted. He's in the building already. I wrote in our group the other day, like that's typically a healthy move that you move on from Evan Brown and you play the drafted guy on the rookie contract. I just hate the lack of depth and the lack of talent they have at guard. We've talked about it for years. I tweeted at like multiple writers who were talking to John and want to know, like, what is the plan to fix this issue that's been dating back 3 coordinators to Bevel now? And it just seems like a John Schneider thing. You heard his comments on that show last week. They don't seem to value interior offensive line, or they're concerned they're overpaid. And I just, every year watching their passing game fall apart in the second half of the season, in the first half, because they can't block in the interior offensive line, I would have liked to see them. And then seeing what Detroit did with Kevin Zeitler. They lose Jonah Jackson, who got overpaid big time by the Rams. Brian, who was a guy me and you liked, but I don't think he gets $17 million. But then slipping in Kevin Zeitler there for half the price. Why was Detroit in the NFC Championship? And Charlie should have been in the Super Bowl last year because they had the best offensive line in the league. When I started watching the Seahawks, they had the best offensive line in the league. And I like everything Evan talked about, and I'm with you. I love what they've done at linebacker and safety and moving on from potentially really bad contracts and taking on low risk, high upside moves there. I like that, but I can't get that guard thing out of my mind.
Can I add one other thing that John Schneider said that concerned me on the guard position? Great call out on that comment. He said not only were they overpaid, that they were overdrafted as well. And that concerns me more. That concerns me more, Jeff. Like, I can rationalize not overpaying guards. I think he does have like a legitimate point there. Like Damian Lewis getting 13, 14 million a year. That's an overpay.
$20 million.
Exactly. Like I'm not paying Robert Hunt $20 million a year. I'm sorry. It's not happening.
But the thing I've learned position, that's where I lost it too, because I was actually talking about this with someone last December. If you actually look at the guards that have been drafted in the first round, like the return on investment has been really good. And you look at like some of the high players that they can draft at guard this year, like a Troy Fantano. Like I think the return on investment could be as good as any other position. Like they've drafted edges so high lately. They've drafted a bunch of edges, running backs. Like they haven't gotten the return on investment really at all in any of those picks. You look at guards, and like Atlanta drafted Chris Lindstrom pretty high. He was an all-pro guard. Zach Martin, when they took him, Dallas fans went absolutely nuts. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Quentin Nelson, I remember, he went in the top 10. He's a perennial all-pro. And there's been a bunch of them, like Baltimore, McDonald, they drafted Tyler Linderbaum. He's a center in the first round. The analytics will tell you can get center later. The guy was an all-pro center last year. Ryan Kelly was a guy that I really liked when the Seahawks were drafting around then. For a while, he was an all-pro, Pro Bowl level player. Actually found that interior offensive line, Nick Mangold, and there's been a lot of them, guards. And I get worried that the Seahawks are just trying to do this thing that Green Bay's done so well, that John grew up with Ted Thompson, and try to patch this thing. When they drafted Steve Hutchinson, what was that, 13th overall, 17th overall, something like that? Again, return on investment has been really high. And I get worried that they have a blind spot of this position. It's going to continue to be the Achilles heel of this franchise.
Yeah, well said. I have a few words on that as well. Before I get into my grade and some of my reactions to what you guys said, I do want to welcome Eric Kanunen. Hopefully I'm saying that right. A new member on YouTube. Really appreciate you joining. And it's great to have more people join in the YouTube community. We've just started accepting memberships there. We're just starting to have some special content. You'll also notice that going forward, our emergency pods, like the mock draft madness, those are going to be available for Patreon members. So patreon.com/hawkblogger. In addition to getting access to the Slack channel, you will also get access to the audio versions of our non-Wednesday episodes. So any emergency pod, any mock draft madness, those will be available for Patreon members only going forward on audio. So we will continue to have a lot of folks join the community and really appreciate your support. If you haven't already, give the show a like and click subscribe. Right now, the chat for the show is for subscribers only. That'll be something we'll probably be playing with as well. So my grade is right between both of you. And it would have been there either way, but I'm a B. And I really, really like all the things that Evan mentioned. So I'm not gonna do the whole thing again, but my favorite part of this free agency period are a lot of the guys that they did not keep, a lot of the contracts that they did not pay. I like the Sam Howell move. That's probably my favorite move relative to value. I think that was a wise move. And this is coming from somebody who really would like them to draft a quarterback, but I think there's something there. I also am not going to go through and restate all the things Jeff already said, but the guard position is an issue, and the tight end position. Jeff saw me put that on Twitter that someone was like, yes, when I complained about Kevin Zeitler leaving to Detroit, which, by the way, I don't necessarily blame John Schneider for Kevin Zeitler specifically deciding to go to Detroit. The guy's 34 years old. For all we know, he had no interest in coming to Seattle, maybe moving cross country, maybe to a team that he doesn't believe is a true contender. and maybe he sees himself sliding right into Detroit and having a real chance at a ring. I think that's totally plausible, but it is very clear. John Schneider says lots of stuff in his press appearances, and some of it's bullshit. Some of it's just, John spewing stuff. When he talked about the guard position and the interior O-line, you could hear that was him getting something off his chest. He is annoyed about the state of the NFL, the market around guards, the market and the value that people are placing on it. He thinks he sees things the right way, and the rest of the league sees them the wrong way, and he wants to make it clear why, that he's got it right. Well, his actions have backed that up, guys. This is the guy that traded Max Unger for Jimmy Graham. It's not a new thing. He has traded interior offensive line talent. He has moved on from interior offense. He's the guy that let Jari Evans go, like, for cheap, right? Now that was probably coaching as well, but he went. And this is a front office that's tried to give us Patrick Lewis, tried to give us, so many secondhand guards, and even the Gabe Jacksons late in their career, all sorts of guys like that. Robert Gallery early on, right? So I just strongly disagree with John Schneider's position on the value of the interior offensive line. And I think the market is what the market is, because what did we just see? Defensive tackles are getting blown up in value. Chris Jones, $30 million. Christian Wilkins, $28 million. What happened to left tackle and right tackle franchise tag numbers when edge rushers started getting paid and edge rushers had that kind of dominance? They go up. What happens to interior offensive linemen's contracts when interior defensive tackles go up? It goes up, and you can cry about it, you can whine about it, but it's the reality. And I believe that those interior offensive linemen can be the difference between a good and a great offense. And right now, I think the Seahawks, they have 3 massive question marks. 3/5 of that offensive line are massive question marks. And I am not a believer in, sure, you could say 4 if you want to, like, set health aside. So I look at that offensive line and I say, all they needed to do was sign one guy, one starting caliber guard, one. And I think you had a chance to turn this offense into a very, very good offense, because you could still draft another one and you'd have some depth and some talent and some upside. They didn't. They did not. And so I think that's a huge, huge mistake. I think it's going to hold this team back, even if they draft a guard. And to Jeff, to your point, everyone's like, oh, Troy Fautano, they'll draft him, or they'll draft, what evidence do we have that John Schneider is going to spend a first-round pick on a guard? I don't think there is any. I think there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. So we're talking about a 3rd round, 4th round rookie guard as your starting left guard. I don't know. So that's kind of my concern there.
I've got a question there though, Brian.
Yeah, go on.
So let's ignore, this is a big ask, but let's ignore the historical data on John Schneider and the guard position for a second. Interior offensive line. Let's ignore it for a second. Let's talk about this position in a vacuum for this offseason. Let's make an assumption that Geno Smith is not the guy next year. Geno Smith is not the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks next year. Does their absence of any significant moves on the offensive line and on the interior line and letting Damian Lewis walk, does that change your perspective if Geno is not the guy next year? And you said it yourself, they're not contending this year. I think we're all in agreement. They're not Super Bowl contenders. Does that change your perception of what they did with the guard position this year? if Geno's not the guy next year.
No.
Okay.
I'm the whole point for me, Evan, is build the roster so that you have a quarterback size hole to fill, and you're then ready to put that guy in. I don't want to draft a rookie quarterback and put him behind this line, like this year or next year. So no, I think it's a really flawed approach, and I really think that they were in a situation where they just had a very simple set of steps. And this, Jeff, you and I, this goes back to like Kelechi Osemele from the Ravens being available and me writing like, please God, John Schneider, sign one of these like quality veteran guards and it'll really help. And he won't do it.
And you know what? I was flipping around channels the other night, and there was a Seahawks Steelers game on from 2019, and it was like peak Russell Wilson. And they're obviously he's on the Steelers now, so I'm guessing that's why they were showing it. And I flipped it on. I'm like, oh, Seahawks game's on. Okay, I'm gonna watch. They had Mike Iupati at left guard. He was at the end of his career on one side, and then they had Dwayne Brown and Mike Iupati, and they had DJ Fluker at right guard. And I know that didn't seem like much at the time. None of us at the time were like, this is not. But they could run the ball in those years. They could they weren't the best pass protecting team, but they had legitimate pro NFL. Like watching Iupati in that game, I know he wore down near the end of his. He was a legitimate left guard, and like watching them play in that game, I was just watching. They looked like a professional offensive line. Like I know Baltimore, the way they've built, and again, I mentioned a healthy roster. You draft a guy like Bradford, you draft a guy like Olu, and you can put them in the starting lineup. That's usually the sign of a healthy roster. However, with the Seahawks on the offensive line, everything you just talked about, Brian, they don't have the benefit of the doubt. And that's where you have to question what they've done. And that's where they do have a lot of young, like Charles Cross is a huge year coming up. He needs to take a step forward. Lucas that's one of the biggest things. And they got Grubb, who has an offensive line background. So I was hoping he would come in and be like, okay, we're going to prioritize offensive line. And I think the problem with their team is they have so many young guys. I think there was that hole to add that veteran in. They like seeing what Iupati did for them or Dwayne Brown did for them. They're going to be really young on the line, which on one hand could be good for roster building, but they kind of have missing that like kind of man strength and kind of that asshole. And that's what we were hoping they were signing. Like Ryan Jensen was a free agent a couple of years ago. That was a guy we really liked. And you saw he went to Tampa, instantly changed the attitude of their team. Like Iupati with Seattle was a great example. He changed the attitude. Dwayne Brown. They're missing that in this group. And even if you draft a guy, I still think they're missing that in their team. And yeah, like across the roster, everything Evan said, I like what they did. Like I would have much rather done what they did at linebacker than pay big money to Jordan Brooks. I know some will disagree with that. Bring back Leonard Williams. Great.
You muted yourself by accident, brother.
Oh, sorry. I think Hankins was a nice move. We've seen how bad they are in run defense. Getting a 320-pound defensive tackle on the cheap. Exactly what they should be doing. They lost Brian Monet, and they haven't been able to really replace that guy. And the run defense has collapsed. Safety, again, like what they did there. All across the roster, they look pretty solid, but there's that giant hole at guard. And that's the thing. We're really lucky Aaron Donald retired. I think that really tanked everything the Rams accomplished on defense last year. I think everything they accomplished on defense is now out the window with that guy gone. And that's where you really need that strength. Eric Armstead's out of the division.
Thank God.
Having a plus at guard, man, would be such an advantage right now. And it's just a gaping hole. And that's where I'm troubling balance because everything I haven't talked about is true. Like I'm stuck on like 2024, and they really need to be building up for 2025. But that hearing these comments and seeing what they've done, it's just they don't seem to get it.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask. So flip it a little bit to a different position. A position that I love what they did. I love what they did at linebacker. It is exactly what I hoped they would do. They did not spend big money. I like Jordan Brooks, and I know some people love Jordan Brooks. I'd feel uncomfortable if we had 3 years, $30 million committed to that guy. I'm not sure he's proven he's the guy I want to take that kind of risk on from an injury perspective or other. or, just cap perspective. I'm glad they didn't spend the money on Patrick Queen. That I mean, it would have been fun, but I'm good with it. And I like Jerome Baker. I think that there's a lot of reason to believe that there's a pretty interesting swap there with him and Brooks. And Dodson's a young guy, cheap guy, and they've got flexibility there. And now they're set up, if the draft falls the right way, the linebacker position could be younger, cheaper, and way better. Like, I think that's possible. So that's a great example of the opposite, where I think they had a good strategy. I wish they had been a little bit more aggressive earlier on. I think there's some other players they could have gotten. I think Willie Gay would have been really interesting in a Mike McDonald defense. But in any event, I like what they did there. And so it's just a philosophy thing. This offensive line issue. All right. Did you guys have any favorite things that they did in free agency?
Like a singular move?
Yeah. Anything that comes to mind?
I love that they brought back Darryl Taylor. I'm just kidding. That actually kind of annoyed me. The George Fant move is like underrated good, I think.
Yeah.
Like that Abe Lucas insurance is really critical. I remember us talking about it specifically, I think in the case of Trent Williams, I think George Fant, we mentioned George Fant too, but like that tackle insurance could pay major dividends later down the year. So probably George Fant as like an underrated good move.
Jeff, you have a favorite move?
I like Jerome Baker. I think it is exactly what we talked about. Brian, we talked about the 2-for-1 swap at linebacker. We had some different names. We didn't have Baker. Dotson was on our list, though, but there's a bit of a checkered history there. So I'm not going to call that my favorite move, but I think what they did was smart. I think they needed good coverage linebackers, stable guys, one-year deals. I think ultimately they needed to draft there, get younger, get fresher legs. And they could have – it got a little scary at linebacker once all those guys came off the board.
Yeah.
I like the two guys they brought in. I think they're the kind of guys – like one of my favorite Seahawks free agent moves I was hoping they'd learn more from was Uchenna Nwosu, where you take an undervalued player, you buy him on the cheap. He's an ascending young guy. And that was like what they did with Chris Clemens years ago. And those are the moves I've been kind of waiting for them. Like they always get those like 1 year stopgaps. And Fant is obviously a good one because, again, if Lucas was hurt last year, it tanked a lot of their games. Like they lost that Bengals game last year simply because of Jay Curran. And they had fucking – he allowed 9 pressures to Sam Hubbard, I think, in that game. And Jason Peters is 42 years old and Stone Forsythe. So the Fant move is great. We handpicked that move. But again, I'm with you, Brian. I love what they did at linebacker. And I think they need to draft there. And then I think all of a sudden you have the depth if you add, and then you have a transition plan. And I think that's exactly what McDonald did really, really well.
You want to hear something interesting? I think it's interesting. It may not be. I just pulled up all the 2023 draft class for offensive line. All the offensive linemen drafted last year in PFF, top grades. And it's pretty interesting because almost none of them graded well. Like the top grade is DeJuan Jones, and he had a 64 grade. So on one hand, it's just important to it's rare to get a great offensive lineman in his rookie year. But then the other piece here, top pass block grade of the whole class of every player, Olu Oluwatimi. 75.5.
In how many snaps?
In 128 snaps. So it's not nothing.
Not nothing.
But it's not, it's not hundreds and hundreds. And as far as run blocking, there's only one guy above 70. His name's Saidi Sow for New England. I've never heard of. He's a guard. And then Joe Tippmann, who was a center that we liked, we talked about last year. So I guess part of my point there is they're going to have to hit, and they're going to have to find someone that's good pretty quick. And we'll have to see how that plays. So Mr. Huff has his work cut out for him. That's for sure. as we get in, I'm going to open up and do some patron questions. As I get that ready, Jeff, can you talk for a second about what Albert Breer said on MMQB, what he said about the Seahawks roster?
So Albert Breer does a mailbag every Wednesday, and he answers a handful of fan questions. And one of the questions was from a Seahawks fan. Obviously don't know him. And they asked, did the Seahawks roster get better or worse? Fair conversation's been going on throughout Seahawks Twitter. I know one Seahawks fan I've talked to is like in a state of like fury about the direction of this team. Breer had a very different opinion. His take was, I don't understand the negativity with this roster. He says for a first-year head coach, McDonald is inheriting a really strong roster. He said the last 2 draft classes, and this is something I actually did hear from scouts a lot last year when I talked with them, that the last 2 draft classes, and he mentioned Cross, Lucas, Maffei, JSN, Witherspoon, Woolen. He said those 2 draft classes, plus the veterans they have on this team, so Gino, DK, Leonard Williams, and then he said those mid-level signings that they made. He mentioned, I think, Baker and Rashawn Jenkins and some of the other, I guess Hankins would be in there. And he said they're a team that looks really good on paper, and they should be good enough with that youth, those veterans, and then those mid-level signings. He said he doesn't see how they don't compete this year for a contention. So we're all talking about like there's no way they're going to contend this year, because I think we know this roster a little better than maybe the national columnists, and we see that clear hole on the team. But really top to bottom, the thing that there's a lot of good players on this team. The thing that me and Brian, I know Evan, we've talked about is I still don't see enough great players on this team. I still see the lack of blue chips, but Breer was really high on that roster coming to those last 2 draft classes. I'm not quite there. I need to see big jumps from a lot of those guys who kind of had step backs last year, but it was really interesting to see him that high. I sent it right to you guys.
Yeah. Contenders was the word he used. Wow. I'll just say this. I felt like the Seahawks were a good interior offensive lineman away, maybe 2, from being able to add 5 to 7 points a game. Like they scored 21 points a game last year. I think this can be a 26, 27 point a game offense. I think with the new coaching, with a healthy offensive line, I think this offense could really jump. I think they really underperformed last year. I think this defense, even if they're just treading water, with Mike McDonald calling the defense and installing it, I think they can be at least 2 to 3 points better than they were last year. Like, I think that's a very realistic. I think there's a lot of malpractice in how that defense was called, coached, organized. And I think that Mike McDonald is the best of the bunch. And I think he can have that kind of effect. If that's true, you're talking about a potential 7 to 10 point swing per game. And that does put the Seahawks into what is a pretty weak NFC into, quote, contender status. So I do think that it's in the realm, if everything falls perfectly, for them to be in the NFC, one of the teams that's like, could they be like a Cowboys style team from last year that had a good season and beat a lot of teams, but probably isn't really a Super Bowl contender? Yeah, I think it is possible that this team gets to the playoffs and wins a game or two. Depends on how the draft falls. But that's how much I think the coaching matters. I really think the coaching has a chance to make a big difference. But from a talent perspective, I don't know how anyone could make the argument that this team is significantly better or even marginally better than they were last year. Like, I don't know how you make that call. All right, let's get into Patreon questions. If you haven't joined patreon.com/hawkblogger, now's the time to do it. Get access to the Slack channel. You can ask us questions, and you're going to get access to all of the off-schedule podcasts when we post them. So continue to join up, patreon.com/hawkblogger. All right. This first question is for Evan Hill from Mark Zuck, and he asks, Why is Jason Myers still on the team? The 5th highest paid kicker in the NFL. The reason why the Seahawks did not make it to the playoffs last year. And how did we end up with $9 million in dead cap for a kicker?
Did you ask this question, Brian? Are you Mark Zuck?
I'm looking right at it, word for word.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg, Jason Myers is still a Seahawk because one of our franchise's greatest coaches, Pete Carroll, believed in his value as a core contributor to this football team and signed him to a 4-year, $21.1 million extension. He's in the second year of that 4-year extension, and he will be making $5.51 million this year as a core contributor of the Seattle Seahawks. So I just want to be clear. If you disrespect Jason Myers, you're actually disrespecting Pete Carroll's legacy. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. So Jason Myers is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, only 12th highest paid Seahawk. That's kind of low.
What is he from a kicker perspective? That is a Bush League way to count, where a kicker should not be in the top 10 in cap hits, for God's sake, on your team.
Nah,
Jesus.
he's 5th highest paid in the NFL, and
he's a bum.
I mean, kickers are kind of getting paid these days, guys.
All right,
Not
this is another question for Evan. Jeff, I promise we'll come to you. This is from Brundon. Can the spider controlling Evan's mind give us a good recap on where things stand cap-wise? What moves would be most likely to open up further cap if needed, and how long has the spider been in control? I'm going to give you some time are you ready to answer that, or do you need a few seconds and I'll ask Jeff a question?
I actually know the ballpark range.
All right, do it.
I don't think OTC over the cap has every single contract listed. But their true cap space is not much. They're in the few million range. OTC has them at 16.2. You take away stuff for practice squad, IR, rookies, and probably a couple of contracts that haven't been submitted to the NFL wire yet. Seattle doesn't have much, like a few million, maybe, if that.
All right. This question is for Jeff from one of our most generous patrons, Michael Mathis. Is next year a more likely year for us to make big splashes in free agency with all the dead cap that we're eating this year? Oops, you're on mute there, Jeff.
They are set up that way for sure. And Evan alluded to this earlier. I know some people have been talking that they don't have as much cap space as realize next year. There are 3 cap numbers that are going to change dramatically next year. Tyler Lockett, who Evan pointed out to me, this is probably his last year with the team based on how his contract is. An even bigger one, Draymond Jones. I think they might have cut him if they could have earlier. The reason they probably didn't is he's going to really clean out next year. Like, I think his cap number is like 21 or 23 million. You can knock off 17 or 18 million cleanly. So he's going to have like 6 million of 23 dead money. It's a clean out. And then Gino. Gino's deal, I know they pushed the money into the future, but it's a really clean out on Gino next year. So if Howell is as good as they might think, or if they draft a quarterback in the next 2 years, so you knock off those 3 contracts, their cap is really clean. I know Leonard Williams' number jumps huge next year, but they don't have to pay any of those young guys on rookie contracts. A lot of their signings this year are 1-year deals. They're going to have a ton of flexibility to do whatever they want next year. So I don't know if Schneider is the kind of guy who's going to spend in free agency. We've seen them how they've used cap room, but they have a very clean cap. And especially the big thing, and Evan talked about this a lot, is they could have spread the Jamal Adams contract out over 2 years. And if that would have bought them an extra $10 million player this year. So they could have done, like, instead they're taking a $19 million dead hit this year. So that's an extra $10 million you're going to have next year on top of the $9 million that would have just been there for this year. So that's $19 million in space right there. That pays for Leonard Williams essentially next year. And then they have, if they knock those 3 contracts off, they're going to have as much money to do whatever they want because they don't have any extensions coming. They don't have big money deals coming. So they're really clean. Again, John Schneider just doesn't historically believe in, but they can make trades. They're going to have as clean as a cap as anyone. going into next year. And that's the value of what they did, even taking a step back potentially even this year.
Those three
All right.
moves alone,
Yeah.
just real quick, those three moves, Tyler Lockett, Geno Smith, Draymond Jones, would leave them with like 67 million in cap space. And if you want to add Noah Fant to that, I suspect that that's a 1-year deal. It goes up to 75. So they're good.
All right. Zach asks, assuming we trade down in the draft, what are your Hawks win-loss predictions for the season? I don't know what trading down has to do with win-loss predictions, Mr. Zach, but I don't know that I've got a win-loss prediction at this point. I think this team was a 9-10 win team last year. I think that they're roughly that this year. They had a brutal schedule last year. I think it'll be hard. The NFL will be hard pressed to give them as hard of a schedule as they had last year. So I think 9-10 wins is a fair guess right now. Jeff, how about you?
Up there, I had them 10 wins last year. I thought their roster was actually better than that, but the schedule was so bad last year. I thought their ceiling was 10 wins, but I get what he's asking for with the trade down. So much of my view of this team's ceiling comes down to this draft. And I know everyone focuses on free agency, and I know it's the fun part. But what makes teams better and what really moves the needle is the draft. And like, if you look at the Rams roster last year at this time, you would have thought they were going to be like a 4-win team, 3-win team. They crushed the draft last year with Kobe Turner and Byron Young and Puka. That turned them into, and obviously all those guys elevated Matt and Steve Avila, who has become a starting quality. They hit on all those guys, and that took them from a 4-win team to probably an 11-win team. And so the Seahawks, for them to raise their ceiling, they absolutely have to hit this draft. And the one thing I learned, if you heard our show Monday, is the thing I'm struggling with is they do have that hole in their draft where you do need to trade down, but I really struggle with the idea of not – there seems to be a clear drop-off in talent, like after pick 18 or 19. And to trade down and get that second-round pick, they're going to have to go through that issue. I think Brian put it on Twitter today. Do you give up that blue-chip talent to get more picks? And that's going to be a big part of their draft, because if they do move down, they absolutely have to hit these picks. We saw what happened with the Rams when they were taking that step back year. They crushed the draft, and they were good right away. And the Seahawks, all those years, they fizzled.
If anybody missed the Mock Draft Madness episode 1 this week, that was a core memory for me. Me trading back to get that second round pick and losing out on marquee players, and then feeling like my draft was just awful, has left me with a lot to think about when it comes to trading down, which gets us to our next question from Sam Howell Brown. Out of all the players who could potentially be available at 16, who's the one player? Well, it says who the one player you'd love to draft the most. I'm going to change it. Who's the one player you would not trade down for? Do you have that player in mind?
Should we all do one?
Yes. Jeff, do you have one?
For me, it's either Troy Fautanu or Jared Verse.
One of those guys could very likely be available.
Can you say more, Jeff?
Again, I talk about line of scrimmage. I talk about physical toughness. Fautanu, to me, I tweeted this a couple weeks ago. I don't even know if he'll be there. He had such a good combine, but to me, he's just like the perfect fit for the Seahawks. He would give them potentially like a dominant left side of the line with him and Cross. I just think he is a guy that the coaching staff will know him so well with Huff and Grubb. And Jared Verse is a guy that I thought was a top 10 player. Thing that makes him so unique, and they're actually pretty deep in numbers. I would consider just moving on from Darrell Taylor if he fell to you, because I think they've lacked a physical edge on defense. And Verse is just the guy who kicks your ass time and time again. And the Seahawks have just lacked that player. So if you can get like a top 10 level player in the trenches, to me, that's what this team's been missing for years. So I don't know if you can replace those guys at any other point of the draft. I know Graham Barton's a guy we really like. So maybe Fautanu is a reach on my part, but versus a guy I think is a top 10 player in this draft.
Evan, do you have a guy? I know you're not as big of a draft obsessor.
Yeah, I'm a huge JJ McCarthy fan. So if he drops to 16, you got a stick and pick. No, I don't have a good answer, Brian. What's your spot?
I think Jared Verse is the guy for me. Byron Murphy's been up there, and so I'm pretty close on him as well. It is fascinating to me. A lot of mocks are just going wildly different right now. There's a few guys moving all. I've seen Jared Verse slip into the 20s in some mocks. I've seen Byron Murphy absolutely going lower, Johnny Newton going lower. I've seen Michael Penix as high as the top 10 in some drafts. And these aren't just like some random, fan. These are people that supposedly have connections to who's drafting where. I think Rich Eisen, take it for what it's worth, I think he was on local radio here saying that there's no way that Michael Penix will be off the board way before the Seahawks pick. And he said it confidently. So I think everything's moving around. And the fact is, what happens is usually quarterbacks get pushed up the draft board the closer you get to the draft. And what that means, guys, there's going to be someone, I guarantee you, there's going to be someone incredibly tempting at 16. It could be a Brock Bowers. It could be a Jared Verse. It could be a Troy Fautanu or a Talise Fuaga. Like, there's going to be someone there that's just going to be like, oh, man, how did they not pick this guy? And it's going to be interesting to see what the Seahawks do. All right. Couple more. Brendan Light asks, Jeff, what are the odds that they re-sign Quandre Diggs after the draft?
Very low, close to zero. They brought in a third safety, not much of one, Wallace from Tennessee, who was that third depth safety. I still think it's a position they very well might draft. They have Jarek Reed. They have Kobe Bryant. I think signing that Wallace, I think added any chance there was of Diggs. I don't think Diggs, he seems like a prideful guy. I don't think he was going to come back anyway. I think the staff wants to move on. I think he's going to want to, but it's been pretty telling to see the little interest that he's been getting on the market. Justin Simmons is still out there, but now they've got three safeties pretty clearly in place with the couple younger guys they have on the roster and potential to draft a guy, since none of these guys are long-term solutions. I don't see the match at all. I think it's close to zero.
I agree. All right. One more for now. Colin, who is he's a boomerang, a recent rejoining patron. So thank you, Colin, for rejoining. He says, of Fuaga, Verse, Byron Murphy, Michael Penix, Brock Bowers, Troy Fautanu, Graham Barton, who would you stick and pick for no matter what? So that's what we just asked, essentially. So I think you got your answer there, Colin. And
Fuaga would be tempting, though. Fuaga would be.
Yeah, no, I think he's on my list of just get a great offensive lineman and don't think twice about it. Like I
would nasty motherfucker.
Especially because Fuaga and Fautanu can both play tackle as well. So you also get a hedge against both your tackles, especially with Fautanu. He can play left tackle potentially. So even if Charles Cross ends up not working out, like he would be a really good pick for the Seahawks. All right, let's end there. Thank you, patrons, for your questions. We don't always get to all of them in one sitting, but appreciate your support. Give the show a like, click subscribe, join as a member, join at patreon.com/hawkblogger, and you too can ask us questions and join the Slack channel where the conversation is popping. All right. Can we do it? Can we do a mock draft? Evan, will you stick around for mock draft?
You guys are so funny. Hell yeah. I'll stick around.
We got to do a mock draft.
All right, I'm out.
All right. Jeff, you pick which sim we're gonna do. We're gonna do a PFF, or we're gonna do the other one we were doing.
I like the PFF better. The PFF one is not good. It's still better than the other one.
All right, here we go. I'm gonna share my screen, and we're gonna do a mock draft because we're gonna just talk through this together about what's going on with this team and how it's going to affect these changes. So with free agency done. So you guys are able to see this. We've got our PFF mock draft simulator. For folks that miss mock draft madness, we use some different sims. Pro Football Network's too slow, and some of the other ones are kind of wonky. They all, as far as I'm concerned, they're all pretty flawed. But we're going to get into this. So Seahawks have the pick at 16. We're going to see what happens here. Let's just see how this went ahead of us. Pretty chalk. This is part of why PFFs has been getting better. They're constantly updating their board. This is a pretty reasonable way that this could fall. By the way, I've seen Dallas Turner starting to fall in some mocks down into the Seahawks range. That's another guy that this was a solid top 8 for a lot of folks. And if he comes down and he's an edge player and John Schneider loves edges, I wouldn't be shocked. So now you get to the 16th spot, and there's our guy, Fautanu. You got Jackson Powers Johnson is another guy. I think Latu is an interesting name for edge rushing. What are we doing? Evan, are you sticking and picking? Are you trading back? What do you want to see? This is the question, man. This is like, you've got a guy you like. You could trade back, maybe get a second round pick, but maybe you lose out on the guy that you really want.
Oh my God, the marketing manager is available. Right?
Yeah, Josh Cashman's favorite player in the draft.
Cooper DeJean.
Yeah,
I'm now only calling him marketing manager.
They don't have a picture here, but we have to pull one.
Can we please pull up the photo that I sent in our chat? Dude,
Can you pull it up here? Pull it up, and you could share
I'll
it.
send it, or I'll send it.
Send it to me. Send it to me. Yeah,
dude, it is so funny.
So I think this Miami move back is a popular one for us. Move back 5 spots, get a second round pick.
Brian, check your DMs.
All right, hold on. Let me.
For me, this is an obvious move back, I think.
Wait, so you wouldn't take? I thought there was a key tackle available.
Fautanu is there. I'd be happy with it, but I think there's enough on the board where I'd be happy with the move down.
Yeah,
I think the Verse and Murphy are the ones I would really have trouble.
So, is Troy not available in that?
Troy is available.
So you would not take him, or you would?
I'd be okay with, because there's other guys on the board I'd like. There's probably 6 guys I like there.
Okay.
All right, hold on. So I'm gonna bring up now.
I know Nathan was Cooper DeJean idea, but there's no fucking way they're gonna take him.
Dude, this is so worth showing, though. It really is. I can, Ryan, if you don't want me to, I can send you a link to the image.
No, I got it. It's just Twitter saves images is like weird. Hold on. I gotta
message hidden due to suspicious content.
We know this GC is very explicit, so
hold on.
This shit is so worth it.
This is frustrating. Hold on. Let me get out of the.
This is great podcasting material.
I don't care, man.
This is funny as hell.
This is how it's gonna happen. We're bringing him on,
dude.
Oh. I don't even know if he is a marketing manager. He looks like
bro, that is your starting safety for the Seattle Seahawks. Imagine you're DK Metcalf and you're lined up against this kid in fucking training camp, brother.
So I was, for folks listening, I was making the case that the Seahawks should seriously consider safety and that this guy could be a great safety. And then Evan posts his picture, and he and Josh Cashman are done at this point. They are completely making decisions based on aesthetic
vibes.
100%.
You cannot tell me that your starting safety looks like that with peace.
Josh, I think Josh said he would quit. I think he said quit cheering for the team. Never make another video again.
I can't do it. I'm sorry. I'm sure he's
this guy's gonna come and like kick all our asses or something.
He's good, dude. He's very, very good.
I know, but Evan's so right. He looks
so many red flags.
Cubicle.
It would be rough if you drafted him and he wasn't.
And that face comes up on the screen.
You see him. That would be rough. That would be real rough.
Oh,
all right. So, Evan, you got Troy Fautanu here. Are you taking him or are you trading back?
Oh, I think I'm sticking and taking Troy. I really am. That's such a
key
position.
We're doing it. We're
Let's do
Evan
it.
doesn't
I'm
get as
cool with
many
that.
choices, so we're doing what Evan wants here. This means no second round pick. We get all the way to the third round.
Rattler.
You want to take a quarterback?
No, I was just kind of screaming out his name.
Devondre Sweat.
That would be pretty appealing, right? Like, do you think John would take him here? Like after Hankins they signed, he's probably short term. Jaron Reed's deal's up after this year. I think they could still take a defensive tackle.
Yeah, they
Cam
need
Young. I don't know.
They kind of blocked Cam Young with Hankins, so.
But the problem is that, like, they kind of have a linebacker depth issue. They definitely have a guard issue. So,
they just drafted a guard.
They just drafted a guard. Never mind. Sorry. I think the obvious choice is to take Sweat, right? He's the best player. We're gonna
Evan, you know about this dude? He's 365 pounds.
And how tall is he?
He's 6'4". I wanna show you because you're such
I want to see the aesthetics. Yes.
You want to see the aesthetics.
He didn't look like at the combine. You would have never guessed. He looked.
Look at this.
Oh,
big boy.
Thick boy season.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike McDonald's gonna love that.
Search up Tavonde's. How do you say his first name?
Tavondre.
Search up Tavondre
He
Sweat.
looked like he carried the weight really well.
Look at him, dude.
Search up Tavondre Sweat short shorts.
I'm not doing that on Twitter. There's just no way. But I will do this. Like,
he's got the Shane Waldron body type.
Look how excited he is.
He's smiling.
Yeah, he was moving. So we're drafting Tavondre Sweat. I'm making this choice. I want this guy on our team. So now we've got offensive interior and defensive interior. Screw you, Mr. Schneider. We're doing it. And now we've got another pick here in the fourth round. Your guy's Rattler still there. Jeff, your turn. What are you doing with this pick? Fourth round pick. We got another pick in 16. This is 102.
I'm going to look at, is there linebacker on the board?
Linebacker. Let me show you what we got.
Might have missed the boat here.
Oh yeah. We left Cedric Gray, Michael Barrett.
But I think those guys would be there in the next round. And what about tight end?
Tight end. You got all the tight ends pretty much.
So all the tight ends will be there the next pick.
They will. Safety.
I don't know anything about Demarion.
I don't either.
No, I think I'd
He played a lot of slot corner, and he's 195 pounds, so he looks like a free safety type.
Nah, I think I'd probably pass. I think I'd take one of the linebackers.
All right, who are you taking?
Pull up my linebacker list.
All right, you got your linebackers.
I'd probably take Michael Barrett.
All right. Jeff takes Michael Barrett.
They're not going to like that pick, but
they're not going to like that pick at all.
He's a Michigan guy. They know him.
Evan, we're back to you. We have not taken our tight end yet. If you want to take a tight end, one of the top guys is on the board here. Have not taken an edge rusher yet.
Have we taken a safety?
We've not taken a safety.
I feel like safety is a position they may target in this class.
I agree. That's why your boy Cooper, the accountant, might be there. The marketing manager.
Mustafa.
Yeah, I'd take a safety.
So you want me to just pick one of these guys?
Yeah, I trust what Mike McDonald can do with them. As long as he doesn't look like a certain
Malik Mustafa guy is a hitter.
You like Malik Mustafa?
Yeah, I saw Nate Tice was tweeting it about.
They don't show photos of these guys in their draft profiles?
No.
Yeah, this guy's a hitter.
All right, done. We're going to take Mustafa. I like that.
I like his last name more.
Yeah, he's got some name value.
Now we need a tight end.
All right, I lost track.
Ooh, Luke McCaffrey.
I'm taking Luke McCaffrey, 100%. I'm not even thinking twice about it, but I'll just, in case folks don't know, we've got it just, if nothing else, because we've got to try to taunt 49ers fans. If we can have the better McCaffrey, it would be
Brother,
fantastic.
Luke McCaffrey looks like he's 12 years old.
Oh yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
What?
Tip Ryman.
Is that so? You're up, Jeff.
Yeah, Tip Ryman.
Tip Ryman. The draft's fallen well in this.
Except for my Michael Barrett pick.
All right, this is the final pick, Evan, of this draft. You could get Tua's brother at quarterback if you want. You could draft a decent safety here. Dominique Hampton, I think. He got some love today from a couple people. You could go, there's always in this flawed thing, there's always a linebacker who I think is he's probably going to go in the 5th round, but he's here in the 7th. What are you going to do, Evan? Give me a position.
I would probably go linebacker.
All right, we're taking Ulofoshio.
Washington.
Yes. All right. I liked that draft. I didn't have to see the grade. I don't care what they graded it.
Minus.
They really didn't like this pick.
So
yeah. That was a McDonald special.
So your first 4 picks, or I'm sorry, you have tackle in the first round. Never mind. Got it.
3 of the first 4.
You know what? If we came out with these 2 guys, I'm good with the draft.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing. Like, you trade back, and then it's like, oh, well, we had to just take this guy who was the best of who was available. I'm not sure I'm as focused on trading back as I was 2 days ago.
I know. That draft a few days ago really changed me.
Well, and now, but what that means is you're going to lose a starting linebacker. Like, you're not getting a starting linebacker in the 3rd round. Junior Colson is not going to be there. Cooper's not going to be there. Wilson's not going to be, like, you're just not. So that's the thing. If you stick and pick in first, you're going to be losing a starter at linebacker. I do like Luke McCaffrey. I don't think he'll go in the 6th round. I think that's a pretty. I think
he
that's
could be like a little annoying rat slot receiver. Like, that's a potential.
Yeah, exactly.
That Julian Edelman. I like that draft.
Right. What's moderately annoying is all of our mock drafts routinely are better than John Schneider's actual drafts. That's like actually frustrating.
You know what?
I don't even say that sarcastically.
You know what else is frustrating, Evan? That when Jackson Smith and Jigba was picked, we did not get to see Jeff's face. Because he was working, man. He was doing professional draft coverage, and we didn't get to see him react to his boy getting picked by the Seahawks.
Oh, I've been wondering if I should go to the draft this year. It's in Detroit, but it's not far from Toronto, but like, it feels like a shitty live thing to go to. Like, I think it's like a TV thing.
You'd be standing around for so long.
I know. I got this like 2 voices. Like, I'm never gonna go to a draft as a fan, but also like, you don't get to hear what they're saying on TV. You stand there for like 3 hours with a bunch of mutants.
I like how you claim that they're somehow different than you.
Oh yeah. I'm normal. I think about more than that. Yeah.
You're so normal, Jeff.
I watch me and Brian do 4 hours of day 3 podcasting. We're normal. Brian called Cam Young 3 hours before round 4 last year. That's how normal we are.
Anthony Bradford, we were on him too.
Yeah, Anthony Bradford, that was like, we were excited when they took him because he's got crazy upside. It's just, man, he looked raw last year and he looked overweight and
slow. I mean, I'm happy with the Anthony Bradford pick. I'm not happy with him being the best guard on the roster. Like, not what I'm happy about. Anything else that you guys wanted to talk about before we wrap tonight? Anything else that like has been on your mind, Seahawks wise, otherwise? What are we going to start texting about as soon as this is over?
How many 49er death threats I can entice like in the next 6 weeks?
Yeah.
I've had some good ones over the past couple days.
Probably Cooper DeJean. We're probably going to text about Cooper DeJean.
Cooper DeJean. We still don't know if it's DeJean or DeJean. I'm gonna have to look that up. That's probably what I'm gonna do next.
I don't know, but like, who's the one guy you'd be like really don't want them to draft? Like, do you have anyone like that in your range? Like I always had like the Trevor Penning like a couple years ago, who they're already trying to replace. Well,
McCarthy, I've been pretty clear I don't want. If they get
I think we're lucky that it seems like he's going to be a top 6 pick.
Yeah,
which is fucking batshit to me, but
I think he's the main one. I
think I'm there with Dallas Turner. I'm not excited about him.
He impressed me at the combine. I will say that.
Oh, he's a good athlete. He just seems like the guy that Schneider would fall in love with, and he's raw and not ready to play.
He seems like a guy that may just not be as good as his physical traits.
Measurables are.
Yeah.
That's like a souped up boy Mafe. Like,
yeah. That's kind of my concern as well. All right, well, fellas, let's wrap there. This has been great. Thank you for everybody that's joined in. Another like massive audience for the live show, which has been fun. We've been having thousands and thousands of folks tuning in for the live shows lately. Been having more content. I've had a little more time on my hands, so I've been going online a little bit more, which is great. And you guys can join the community that's growing. All you got to do is click subscribe. We're pushing 10,000 subscribers. And guys, we got to come up with something we're going to do when we hit 10,000 subscribers. I don't know what it's going to be, but we're going to have to put our heads together and start thinking about that. Also, patreon.com/hawkblogger. Sign up, get access to the Slack channel, ask us questions, all that good stuff, and become a YouTube member now. We're going to start doing private YouTube Q&A. There'll be private live streams for YouTube members as time goes. So now's the time to join, get on early, make a name for yourself, and we will see you all soon. Until the next time, go Hawks, and let's hope the draft falls their way the way it did for us in the mock tonight. Take care.